Welcome, everybody. This is my final project presentation. My name is Mark Coop. I'm presenting this for Music 612, 612. So, yeah, here we go. I kind of chose this project because one of my biggest uh, goals with in pursuing a doctorate in this is technology, and I've always had an affinity for technology use in music education, and immediately wanted to integrate that into this project. The last 10 years of my teaching, I spent a lot of time exploring and using the technology in many ways. Some were more successful than others, but really feel like that is an underutilized thing in our school system, and especially music. From an in-school from while using this in school, the classrooms and practice rooms and fully flipped classroom style invitations, the technological advances are very exciting to try and keep up with. Since the beginning of my doctoral studies, I've been very interested in this, and particularly with remote assessment, and was planning to formulate my dissertation around it even before all of this COVID stuff happened. So I was just kind of wanting to talk about the use of technology in remote instruction that was before COVID, after COVID, during COVID, all those things, and some of the long-term effects that we can bring back into the non-COVID classroom. Like, is technology worth it in the end? Is the amount of time it requires worth it? Are we forcing the use of technology? Were we before? We for sure were doing that in during the COVID time, and then again afterward. Are we just forcing it because we feel like technology is around and available for us to use? So how do we use this without it creating more work for students and teachers? And is this hindering the overall experience in the ensemble classroom? Is it better just to do the as Dr. Singleton liked to say, the brick and mortar classroom versus the more technological and virtual classroom? Um, so yeah, here we go. Talking about the pre-COVID time. Do we even remember what normal was? I mean, what was a normal brick and mortar classroom? What technology were you utilizing from in 2019 or before? So I'm going to kind of talk through that and think about some of the stuff that you were doing before and how we're going to implement this after this whole COVID time. And everybody's time in this last year during COVID was very different. Since the pandemic hit, remote assessment has not been the only form of technology that we needed to use, but completely flipping the classroom went from maybe a couple things to being fully remote. Next thing you knew, amount of technology that has been developed by companies or redefined in the last year is mind-boggling and super exciting to see what teachers are going to keep on utilizing in the years to come. And were you fully remote? Were you just hybrid? Was your ensemble class fully canceled? And are you now facing scheduling issues, or were you facing scheduling issues and not being able to have your ensemble? For me, I know my middle school band, we didn't have the room anymore. We weren't allowed in that part of the school because of the numbers that we were allowed to be having in certain cohorts and all of that thing. So yeah, technology was forced upon us due to COVID. What were some of the highlights that you used or did, and then how, really thinking about how they are going to be continued to be beneficial to us. So there, in order to present the technology in the classroom, you need to have a solid foundation for which to build it off of. And usually it's not up to you, but it's a top-down implementation for the learning management system, the LMS, that the whole entire school district is using. I'm sure that you are familiar with one of these 6 ones that I'm posting on the slide. Is there enough technology? Is this enough technology, or do you need more? Like, I know that Schoology is a great option that does certain things. Canvas does completely different things. Blackboard and Moodle and Absorb. So where do we go from here with this LMS system? Or do you need more technology from which to build off of? So if the classroom management system that your school has provided is not sufficient for your needs. There's a lot of really good other options like Google Classroom, or even just a website where that is that you create your own website and to meet your needs. Like my favorites are Google Sites or GoDaddy, Weebly, WordPress, and Wix are all fabulous options that you can use as the vessel and vehicle to get your technology out there for the students who probably are using those things. And so I think that is just a super important base in order to have, in order to be able to utilize the um, remoteness, the technology that you are going to be using coming out of this COVID time, if you're not already doing it. Another cool one is the Music First Classroom. It is an actual learning management system. You can do grades, you can do all of these things, interacting and emailing from that system, but it is the only specific one that is around for music. And it actually, a lot of the other apps that we're going to talk about are based out of here and directly correlate to that. So it is a great option to help you out. So though the in-person face-to-face seems to be a little bit more difficult nowadays, or maybe at all, there's we're doing screen to screen now, but there's still a need to actually interact with students. But our performance ensembles, our music ensembles are really hard. There's a lot of hurdles in order to that we need to address in order to be able to use these. So like Zoom and Google Meets are ones that you can try to attempt to run a rehearsal. And in order to do this in a group setting, you need to be able to, you can't really hear all the students all at once. You can only hear one speaker. So some of the hurdles that you might, even just beyond that, knowing you can't hear all the parts, knowing you can't see maybe everybody all at the same time in one screen, or they might not be able to hear you. So like even just the connectivity issues and the video lag of trying to do instead of just face to face, instead of screen to screen, even let alone a whole ensemble, even just one to one in a lesson setting. This is a hurdle, but it isn't impossible in lessons. I think this is where it could and has been beneficial during this time. Click tracks and audio recordings that you push out to the students, that they listen to while you are doing that, or even one that you are playing on your computer during the Zoom, so they're watching you conduct along, and as well as listening to that. Sometimes the lag there doesn't work and you can't actually do that. Other big struggle with this is the no human interaction and emotion case. So like it's like, all right, push play on that recording and you get to play with the recording, as opposed to having any push or pull or influence, or say yelling to the flute section to play, to roll out, or to work on these little human interactions that make an ensemble an ensemble. This begs the question is, well, if you could just do this with a teacher, then why not just do this with a professional or some big fancy composer, conductor that could do the same thing for you? And I actually had a principal ask me this, like, well, can't you just teach from home, or should I just hire somebody in LA who wants to do it? And it's just like, wow, that's mind blowing. So some of these screen to screen things are really fascinating and really taking thoughts of your performance group to a new level. But how do you hear that wrong note in the ensemble? Okay, well, we have to work through some remote assessments. So a lot of the things that would be implementable and have been are in the past, before COVID even, are some video and audio recordings. Like, hey, take this audio recorder, go to the practice room, record your performance, and we'll listen to it and give you feedback. Virtual ensembles, take a video. Okay, so a cappella. You take a little video and you can make a whole ensemble with just you or with a couple of friends. Some of these other ones are just more social media, virtual social media, where you can play, record, and then do things like that. All right. One last thing I wanted to mention about the remote assessment tools is like Flipgrid and a couple of these other ones are like video assignments. You can assign them, and then it'll actually populate your LMS. And Soundtrap does that as well. I think that is a really awesome feature to just from a collection standpoint. I know I struggle with students turning things in remotely. It's like, oh, I didn't know, and but that will hopefully be one of the benefits to being back in the classroom and whatever sense we are. Um, some of the nice things with remote assessments are there's automatic assessors that like Smart Music and Practice First that will give you feedback on the wrong notes. You, the student, you, the teacher, recordings of their submissions and actual correct notes, wrong notes, right notes, visual responses. So these give them all these great things. It gives it overall less work for teachers. But the thing I am continuing to struggle with is does that provide them with enough in moment feedback, and does the a week later response or the immediate grade kind of ring true, or is it better to have them play in the class and able to do these assessments in class assessments. Um, so yeah, all of these just assessment options give efficiency, but they also potentially give a final result that is more quickly achieved. But maybe it might be less. There are some gaps that you will create by implementing these that will that feedback actually slow down the process like right now in the COVID time that is our option whereas moving forward is it worth it is are these options going to be what we want to have implemented in our classrooms. um, Remote theory, music theory has been computerized for years and years and years. Very helpful. You can do everything from the names of the notes to hearing to ear training with the using hearing and writing and producing your notated melodies on these these six programs that I listed: Notefly, MuseScore, Flat, Hook Theory, Hook Pad, Chrome Music Lab, and MusicTheory.net are all super popular ones that will offer these things. And then people and teachers have gotten creative during this time doing them remotely at home. Is that something that we want to take forward out of this? Does it also give you more efficiency, or is it too cumbersome that the good old-fashioned pen and paper will do? Is the physical act of writing and hearing these in real time better or worse than the drawbacks that outweigh them? All right, these are just some big things like I'm really curious about as we enter our post-COVID world. Like we're still going to have technology, we're still going to have parts of this that can be remote. So what are we going to do? We're looking past COVID. Where do we go from here? What can we learn from teaching during this time in COVID? What are we going to implement remotely, or keep them how are we going to implement them in the classroom, but using the technology in the classroom? Is it going to make up for the lost time? Are we just going to chalk this up to a bunch of lost time? These are questions that have been on every music teacher's mind as we are slowly emerging from this pandemic. And just where do we go from here? Do we go back to our regular classroom? Are there aspects of the remote classroom that we keep and promote and translate them into like a flipped classroom, into some sort of distance learning, or a hybrid curriculum that is kind of what we used to do and a little bit of what we didn't do? I'm sure there's just such the gamut, and every teacher is going to have their own philosophy and productivity of in person. But the real questions that are presented for the flipped classroom is like what can be taught virtually and reinforced in person. Are there assessments? Are these assessments do we that we do at home and then we do a couple in the classroom, or we do all of the teaching of theory, ear training, or in history at home? Do we assign private lessons so they have virtual private lessons outside of the school day? All right. The next question of where we're going from here is distance learning. So musicians from around the world have been creating super creative ways to continue to progress their learning from a distance. There's been everything from lessons with the masters and master classes given from professionals for people who are out of their performing work with these big symphony orchestras or out of their solo touring career and not short-term career, not their whole career, and are able to do virtual lessons and realizing it's not that hard, and they can make a pretty good living just doing virtual lessons. Or other composers and conductors creating virtual ensembles of their work and having hundreds and hundreds of people be in from different countries and um, creating these amazing virtual ensembles that are a lot of technological work, but a really cool experience. And people are talking about how special and how hard it was, and how much more of an appreciation they have for their instruments or their voices and these ensembles and their directors because of the virtual ensembles that they did from a distance during this time. A lot of people are able to continue this learning process while traveling, and I have had students say, "Hey, why can I going to Europe, going back home for 2 months? Can I continue to be in your band class?" I was like, "Yes, let's figure this out." So the options are pretty endless. Like, how are we going to continue to develop the distance learning um, curriculum and give that option? And ultimately, I think it's going to be some sort of hybrid curriculum. Like, we don't know what our schedule is going to look like if COVID has another wave and we have to more outbreaks. We're probably going to have to go virtual real quick. So are we having the same sixth, seventh, eighth grade high school bands, all of these different ensembles, or are they combining things? Are we losing students because of the lack of time? And in order to combat all of these things, we're going to have to need to be flexible and have some sort of hybrid thing. Is your principal or administrators, are they expecting you to still give remote options and still include students that way? Are students and families realizing, hey, I can continue to do this remotely? I'm going to do that and expect um, you to continue to offer these amazing things. So what is our new normal? Like, what is technology? Music technology is not going away. What are we going to be using? We can choose to focus on the negatives of this last year during COVID, or we can strive to see the long-term benefits that this 2020-21 school year has provided and given us these opportunities. Super rare, awesome opportunity to come out of this developing a stronger curriculum, whether it's hybrid or virtual or completely back to your traditional settings, like whatever it might look like. We need to embrace this technology and implement it in ways that are best for you, best for your students. And what are some of those long lasting effects? Is a large ensemble competition going to look the same? Is your marching festival they going to be the same? Are we going to be able to teach our band camps virtually? Is that going to go away? Like, what is our new normal, and how are we going to push through and progress as teachers? Is the goal and thoughts of my final project and things I've been thinking about throughout this whole year, doing 519 and 612, and really excited to see where we go from here and continue to study all that is music education through this upcoming couple of years. So thank you so much. Have a great day and see you next semester, next year.